So welcome back. I have my next guest with me, Danielle, and Danielle is here to get a touch up on her color. I really like the golden tone for what she has going on, but my real goal is to be able to give her something that stands out a little bit more and grows in a little bit easier. We'll have these clients that come into our salon very often and they're looking for something different and something fun, but we don't have a whole lot of time to be able to change their look. So what I thought about today technique-wise is we would go in with that similar face frame technique that we did with our last guest, but then incorporate some balayage with it. And so this I do a lot of times to be able to create some more depth and some brighter pieces in through my mid-length and ends without having to spend an hour and a half putting in color. So the thought process today is I'm going to throw in a couple of foils in the key spots that we need the bright and intensity, and then adding in a little bit of our freehand technique so that we can show off a little bit of the dimension through the mid-length and ends, and it can feel like a partial without having to take up the time of a partial highlight. So we'll go through some of the steps and some of my tricks, and then I will show you up Danielle's finished look after. So Danielle parts her hair here on the side, so we're going to incorporate that. The first thing that I want to do is just kind of clean up that part line a little bit more. So I'm just going to take that. And I'm going to put in some horizontal highlights. The reason I want to do that is I want them to live exactly in the place that they are, but I know that we get a little bit nervous as to, are they going to match up to where her part is? So I have a special little technique that I like to do. So I'm going to have you tilt your head down just a little bit for me, Danielle. So I start off with a nice clean part. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a nice zigzag line, and that's going to diffuse her part so that as I add in my highlight, I won't have such a strict line of where I'm able to start. So for my first section here, I'm just going to go through and pick up some of that hair that we already weaved with our zigzag parting. It makes that a little bit easier for me. Depending on the look of what she wants, you can do a thicker or a thinner. For this, I'm following what look that she had before, and I'm just going to touch up with that zigzag parting. So again, I'm going to take my foil. I'm going to make sure I lift this hair all the way up and back, then drop it down on my foil so that I know that I'm getting a lot closer to the root, and I don't have to worry about missing the closest to the part line so that you don't lose your highlight. So I'm just going to go through. We're just going to touch and tap up. So as I'm dragging the product down, I will run through some of my dingier ends. I want to leave out some of those delicate, fragile pieces. So with using the same bleach, I am a little bit more heavy-handed towards the root. And then as I get down to my mid-length and ends, I'm really just trying to scrape up some of that product so I can get it lightened, but not to the intensity as I am at my root. So we'll take that. I'm going to leave my ends out. I'm going to fold it up once. I'm going to fold it up a second time, just so any of the light pieces that were down here get the heat from the root. That will have better lifting so that everything lifts even from roots to ends. So now that I have that, I'm just going to spin around a little bit, and then I'm going to do the reverse side of this application. So I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to take the other side of my weaved pattern. Perfect. So no matter where she parts her hair within that part, I know that I'm going to make sure I have a foil there. So same thing here. I'm going to take my foil. I'm going to take my section. I'm going to pull it all the way back. Drop it all the way down. I'm just going to correct that. It's a little too thick for my liking. And we're going to apply our bleach. So this is again high lift bleach. I mix this with 20 volume again. It will give me the superior lift that I'm looking for, and I will make sure that I get a nice clean blonde. 20 volume is my go-to. There are times in situations where you can use 30, especially if you're looking for a lot of lift. But with high lift bleach, I do encourage people to stay with 20 and 30 volume compared to using a 40. In laboratory studies, it's shown that 30 and 40 volume will lift to the same intensity, but 30 will keep the hair in better condition, especially when we're talking about our high lift bleach. So I will use 20 and 30 specifically for high lift, but when I'm using my easy lift, I will add in 10, 20, 30, or 40, and that's the benefit of our easy lift. Great, I'm just gonna have you tilt your head back a little bit for me. So as you can see with our first parting, we were able to get both sides, and that's really helpful so that no matter where she parts her hair, I'm able to get that root covered. So with our next section here, I'm gonna go into the heavier side. You can tilt your head back again this way. So for my heavier side of the hair for where she parts, I'm just going to section out the hair from the back, from the front. And I'm going to do 3 foils. And this is really to ensure that we have dimension and brightness towards the root, but that we're not doing so many highlights where we're spending hours and hours to achieve the same lightening process. So for my next section, I'm just going to take the hair. I'm going to do a medium-sized weave, nothing too small, but nothing too big. This we can still kind of see as we part the hair, so I want to be able to see it, but not overdo it. So I'm going to take my section. Again, I'm going to lift the hair all the way up and back, and then fold it down on my foil so that I get really good traction at the root, and I'm not worried about it slipping. So we'll apply the product. I'm going to tickle it towards the root. Being that the bleach does not swell, you're not going to have to worry about it slipping outside of the foil. So if you wanted to tickle that as close as you can get, you have the insurance that the product will not slip and lose itself in the into the foil. Remove my ends. Let's line up my foil. And we'll lock that in. Great, so we got 2 there. I'm gonna add in maybe 1 to 2 more on this side, being that this is the heavier side at which she parts her hair. So I wanna make sure I have enough insurance that it's light enough. Again, taking my section, I'm just gonna take my weave. Up and back. Lock that foil in. And apply my bleach. Move my mid length and ends out. Lock in my foil. And then looking towards the hairline, this is what I'm kind of focusing on. So if I notice that she parts her hair a little bit over, I usually can get away with 3 foils, but if she parts it over, I want to make sure that I'm incorporating the recession line. So I could add in 1 more here to guarantee insurance, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to add in 1 more, and this is just to make sure that the front of her hair will keep that brightness. So taking my section, medium weave. Lift all the way up, drop all the way down. Grab our BB bleach. This is our high lift mixed with 20 volume in a 1:2 mixing ratio. Lock that in. And as we flip over, sorry, could show around the face. So what we have here in through her part is we have our 4 foils on the heavier side of the part. We'll then go ahead and put in 2 more foils on this side. and then we'll touch back base so that we can go over the next steps. So now that we finish this up and around the face, what we can do is we can go into the back of our section to continue our partial. So what I have here is the back section at which most of our clients see and the parts that make the most sense. A lot of times we'll spend an insane amount of time in through the bottom and the back, when really we can focus on just this triangle and get a complete blonde look with less foil work. So I'm just going to take a couple quick sections so you can see what this looks like. For this first one here, I'm just going to take a light slice. I want to create a lot of blonde, but I don't want it to be so stripy or so visual. So I'm going to take a nice thin section. Again, I'm going to take my hair, lift it up, drop it over the top of the foil so that you can see there's very little hair there, but it will give me the intensity that I need for this section. So painting up right to the line, dragging that down to where the blonde meets. I'm just going to lock that in. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, following this pattern, I'm going to take a light skim. Section this hair out of the way. Lift it up. Drop it down to lock it in. And then I'm going to take my BB Bleach 9 High Lift, mixed with 20 volume and a 1:2 mixing ratio. And we're going to tickle this up towards the root. I'm going to lock this in. I'm not folding it up twice. I want to keep this nice and clean for this section. So now that I have our two bold pieces right underneath, the only thing I'm looking to do is add in some brighter dimension to this triangle piece. So if your preferred method is sticking with slicing, make sure that you keep those nice and thin. For me in the back, I want to make sure that it blends really seamlessly, so I'm going to take a soft weave. We'll probably throw in about 3 of these sections so that you can continue that intensity, but still give her something that grows in very easily and something that doesn't require a ton of maintenance. So we have our first foil. We'll take our second foil. Second weave here. I'm still making sure that they're not too big, but I'm making sure that I can give a little bit more visual to that highlight. So you can see it's a little bit bigger than our first section. Again, taking our foil, lifting up, dropping down to lock it into place, and you can see where we're missing our lightness towards the root. So we're just going to apply our product, drag down to where we need, and tickle up towards the root. Tickling up towards the root is also going to move product away from the root. So if you did apply too much, like I did in that one little section there, I can hold it close and I can just drag down the product from the root so that I can get those pieces closer to the root A, and then B, drive down the product that had too much at the root. So again, I'm just going to apply a little bit. Those mid-length ends in that section need a little bit more love. Fold this up. Again, flip. And then we will lock this into place and apply our final highlight in the back. So I'm just going to take this light skim of hair and then take our last foil. Again, taking a medium-sized weave, not too small, not too big. So I'll take my foil. Again, in our last section, I'm going to lift it up, drop it down, apply my bleach, and then we will tickle that up towards the roots. Just for extra saturation, I'm going to apply a little bit more product towards the roots. A little bit to the ends, just to make sure the very bitty ends out. Section up my foil, and just lock it into place. And so now what we have here is our back section mixed in with our top pieces. So we have coverage at her root for where she parts her hair, and we have coverage in through the back. No matter where she's going to pull it, we have protection from either side and through the top. So everything should blend really nicely. From at this point, what we need to do is we are going to mix up our balayage highlights, and I will show you some of my placement so that I can balayage around the face, in through some of the interior, and then also some of those exterior ends so that you get that complementary color without putting in a million foils. So what we'll do now is we'll mix up the freestyle bleach, and then we'll show some of our free-handed techniques. Great, so now with that we have our foil highlights in, we're ready to address some of our mid-length and ends, and also talk about some of our other products that we have. So what I have for you guys today is our BB Bleach Freestyle Lift. So like I said in the beginning, this is our freehand technique bleach. So it is white clay based, and the importance of that is it's going to create a shell on the outside of the hair, and then it's going to remain active so that you're able to create lift and get up to about 7 levels of lift. And specifically, this is great for this technique, being that someone has already put in all these great blonde highlights. I just need to create added dimension. So for our previous guests, we added in low lights to create a little bit more of a pop. In this particular situation, I'm going to add in some highlighted pieces to around her face and in through the back to show you quick techniques to tie this all in. So it's very simple to use our Freestyle Lift bleach. The only rule to remember is that it's mixed in a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. That's going to ensure that you get that shell on the outside of your bleach. If you prefer to mix your bleach in a 1-to-2 mixing ratio, it's totally fine. The bleach will still work. The only thing that you're going to miss is that shell that it creates on the outside of the hair. Little pro tip for you, I also like to do this inside of a foil, particularly for people that it's hard to get it to stick to the foil. So just because it's a freehand bleach does not mean that you can only use it freehand. So I am going to go with our 20 volume developer, and we're going to mix this in a 1-to-1 mixing ratio. With Freestyle Lift bleach, you can mix it with 10, 20, 30, or 40 volume to be able to create that lift. So we're just going to stir up some of that product. Perfect. So as you can see, the consistency is a little bit different, especially that it's mixed 1-to-1 versus 1-to-2, how I prefer my bleach most of the time. But this is really helpful so that we can create those freehand techniques and we don't have to worry about it bruising onto the other hair, or you're not having to worry about it transitioning into the other hair, so that as you're applying freehand, it can keep it soft and technique, so you don't have to worry about it being too messy. So as we mix this, you can see we have just a little bit of drippage, but it is a thicker consistency, great for balayage work. All right, so for our first technique, I'm just gonna move these foils up and out of the way, just to keep everything nice and neat and clean. I will turn her so you guys can see the sections of what I'm working with. So product-wise, I like to work with a paddle board. This makes it very easy for me to apply the product. So I'm not working out of the ball, I'm working on a paddle. So So I'm just applying the product. So I'm just applying the product, thinning them out to the board. I will take a section around her face, just comb that out, and then working in diagonal sections, clip my hair out of the way, and I'm going to take about 3 larger sections, and then as I balayage, I'm going to take my brush, just clean it off a little bit on my paddle, and then I'm going to take and I'm just going to trace out my highlights. Depending on how far I bring them up will depend on how light the intensity is. So if you want to have brighter around the face, I would start closer to the root here and then drag down further towards the ends. As I'm painting, I just want to lift my section up, paint the bottom half of the sections before I drop them into my paddle. And then into my paddle, I can really load the product up and gently rest the hair away from her. Being that we have that white clay, it's really helpful so that it helps separate the product from the other hair. So I'll just take a couple sections going up and then I'll show you around the face. So now that we've finished those pieces around the face, we can go in and do a little bit more detail around the hairline. So I'm still using my paddle board, but the only difference is I'm using a smaller and cleaner brush for more of the detailed work. So when I do this, I'm just going to take a little skim from the side and just grab a little bit of product, and then holding it back away from her face, I'm just going to go in through and I'm going to paint some detailed pieces so that we can get closer to the root and also keep her bright around the face. So holding these sections, I'm just taking bit by bit, and I'm going to paint this back away from her face. Again, just a little bit of product. Applying that. Keep all of the intensity around her face, but keeping it more lived in and not so stripy as like a foil highlight would. Again, one more time here. Just gonna apply back. And being that we have that white clay technology, we can rest it on top of the other hair without having to worry about it transferring. So now what we'll do is the same technique on the other side, and then we'll do the technique in the back. Great, so now that we were able to finish the balayage on both sides of the hair and around the face, what we're working through now is just here in the back, and as you can see, I'm leaving some of the dimension, but I'm just adding in a little bit of pop of color to brighten up some of these mid-length and ends. So we'll take our section. I'm just going to clip this hair up, and I'm going to take just a few pieces. Oops, sorry. And then we will balayage them just like we were doing before. Taking our single sections, I'm just going to apply the lightener, tickle it down to the ends, bend it just a little bit. And being that we have our white clay additive, we can make sure that that stays away from the other hair without having to bruise. So as we're taking our sections, we're just isolating pieces because I want to make sure I keep my depth in between. So I'm just going to take and I'm going to paint up some of the sides, paint down towards my ends, and then add that into my paddle. Again, we're going to leave this on top of the hair. I can do that with our Freestyle Lift Bleach because it has that white clay to help keep it away from our other colors or the natural hair. We'll take 2 more sections. So here, I'm just gonna add one in the middle so that I create some depth. So I have some highlighted pieces on the ends. I'm just gonna add one to the middle so I don't forget about that depth. Applying our Freestyle Lift Bleach. As you can see, I start in the middle and I kind of tickle up towards the roots, just so that we get that really ease of blend. Go up and paint the bottom just a little bit. Drop into my paddle. And finish saturating those ends. Great, last section here. Drop those pieces. Again, I'm just going to take the very ends of it. And I'll take my product, starting on my mid-length, paint up towards my root. Being that she already has this great blonde shade, I'm just going to enhance it and brighten it up to add dimension. Drop into my paddle. Whoop. That's okay. And they're going to rest right there. As I drop my foils, you can see my overlay. And if I want, which I do want, I'm gonna take some of these ends and I'm just going to brighten up a couple of these pieces. You can saturate the ends fully, or you can leave a light skim to the surface, which I'm going to try. So just taking our hair, applying mid-length and ends, just to brighten up some of those pops. One last one here. So we'll take it, apply to the corners, and then we'll just tickle down to the ends. Being that we have our Freestyle Lift Bleach, we're not worried about these colors processing in open air. That shell that's going to be created from that white clay will have a barrier against your other hair. And the benefit is here, we've added in a couple of foils in our key place so that we're able to create a lot of brightness and a lot of intensity. Where we already had some of our brighter bits, we were able to utilize the Freestyle Lift Bleach and just to give it a little bit of pump, a little bit of kick, so we're able to have these brighter ends. And then after this is all finished, we're gonna go in with our Colorwear Gloss Toner and create some nice warm golden tones to help support her skin tone and give her that bright sunny blonde that she's used to. So as you can see here, Danielle's color is all finished up, just bringing you back into what we had going on a little bit before. So she had had some regrowth, and what we addressed were the most important spots to lay our foil highlights. So we did that with our High Lift Bleach with 20 volume mixed in a 1:2 mixing ratio. So we were able to place those in our definitive parts. Remember our zigzag section that we did before, just to hide any of that regrowth line. So as it grows out, everything is nice and easy and you're not trying to figure out where to place those highlights. We're also able to add 4 onto this side and 3 onto this side. Because of that part, you're able to get perfect definition. So no matter where she parts it, you'll be able to get those highlights. And then after we were able to place those highlights, we went back in with our Freestyle Lift Bleach, mixed 1:1 to create that nice shell on the outside so that the bleach is hardened on the outside, so you don't have to worry about it bruising or bleeding onto the next section, but stays nice and active on the inside, so you're able to continue to get up to 7 levels of lift. We did that with 20 volume, mixed 1:1 with our Freestyle Lift Bleach. We let that process for about 20 minutes. And room temperature, no heat of course. And then after that was done, we rinsed, shampooed, and then we were able to apply another one of my favorite glosses. Is we have the gloss toner, equal parts of 1022 and 10.32. So the combination of those two together, you're able to create more of a neutral tone so that you're able to not go too ashy, too gold, but combining 2 shades that you wouldn't normally think of to be able to create a perfect toner is what Gloss Toners is going to be able to do for you. The other benefit is, as you can see, we're able to keep her nice and bright. We didn't have to add clear. You can see through that translucency so that her blonde is able to stay bright and dimensional. So That being said, with the color, we're also able to take amazing care of her hair because we have that bond builder built into it. Remember, we have our apple cider vinegar that is infused right into the product to keep the hair maintained, and 62% better, less cuticle erosion with that color. So technique-wise, I will show you a little bit of the back of her hair as well, so you can see that blend with our partial. So as you can see with our partial section of her hair, we were able to get the coverage that we needed, placing the highlights exactly where they needed to be. We didn't have to add in a million foils to be able to create a nice soft blonde for our client. And then as we turn around, it's nice to be able to play around with our Colorwear Gloss Toner, giving another tool to add to our blonding tool belt. So it's just another part of the Colorwear system.